All right, thank you all so much for providing your thoughtful and honest feedback on Unit 3. I'm going to try to go through this fairly quickly while also making sure to answer anything that came up and give you a clear idea of what we're going to be focusing on moving forward in the second quarter and as we continue with Unit 4. So let's start with what's going well. Let's see what's been working well for scholars in World History 1. It is important to remember that everybody has different interests and strengths. Your favorite assignment is almost always one that another student in their feedback begs me to never do again. So keep that in mind when you are working on assignments that you enjoy, that someone else may find it very difficult or very boring, and when you are working on ones that you yourself find tedious or more challenging or boring, that it may be to someone else's benefit. Further, it may simply be that that is the best way to learn that skill, and it may be that you don't like it because it is challenging more than it is fun. And it is definitely important that learning is fun, but it is also necessary to do hard things and lean into struggle. That is how you learn. So we will definitely still do games. I saw a lot of folks saying that they really enjoyed the choose your own adventure simulation type games, but we can't do them every class. I'll try to do one at least once every 2 weeks, but games are review. They aren't sufficient for mastering 9th grade skills. And we're going to talk about those skills in a few minutes. I was very happy to see that direct vocabulary practice is helping many of you, and we will definitely keep doing that. For it to be beneficial, make sure that you are reviewing your flashcards. So now let's take a look at where we are struggling. Let's see what you all said and what we can do about it. Many scholars said nothing or I didn't struggle with anything this unit, so that's definitely a good sign. And the test kind of reflected that. The average score was about an 80%, and that is the goal of mastery. So that was very encouraging to see. A number of scholars said they are still struggling a little bit with the vocabulary. We will continue to do direct vocabulary practice, but make sure that you are reviewing your flashcards, whether you are using Quizlet or index cards. Either way, 5 to 10 minutes a night will make a huge difference. On the other hand, you cannot learn vocabulary terms by seeing them flashed across a screen one time or by glancing over a glossary one time. For words to become part of your lexicon, meaning part of your own vocabulary so that you can use them effectively and accurately, and that you can identify them as they are used in text, you do need to do regular repetitive practice. Vocabulary is one of those things that is truly memorization, and then once you know it, you have it. If you would like one-to-one time to go over review strategies, definitely email me. A few other scholars said that they're not always sure what the directions are asking. And this was frustrating for me to read because I haven't been hearing from you. So make sure that you're reaching out with questions. Especially on self-paced days, I am here. Right now, it's 10:47 on Monday. I'm here, right? If I can make this video, I can jump on Zoom with you. I just met with a student a few minutes ago. So we can jump on Zoom. If you're confused about the directions, you're not sure what you're supposed to do, and I can word the questions in a different way so you understand and you're all set, and reducing or removing any stress and frustration that might cause you to shut down and keep you from doing your best work. Just make sure you're reaching out. This one really stood out to me. This was pulled directly from the survey. It was one assignment, I didn't know how to do it at all, and I got really confused, and it was already close to the time for submitting, so I didn't email about it. Time management is definitely important, but it is also a skill that you are learning, and I recognize that. Communication and accountability are also important skills and ones that I will reward. Again, deadlines are important. If you miss a deadline and you haven't emailed me, you haven't turned any work in, you're going to get a 0, And even if you resubmit your work, it's not going to be graded. However, if you email me and you own up to your mistake saying, Miss Lund, I know it's close to the deadline and I should have started my work earlier, but I'm really confused by this assignment. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to submit what answers I come up with, but could we meet one-to-one on Zoom tomorrow to go over this so I understand? I will 100% give you the opportunity to meet with me, walk through it, and then resubmit for a better grade. As long as you come to that Zoom meeting and you do that work, you will make up the lost points without penalty. Again, provided that you submitted something. Even if it's a little bit past the deadline, show me something that we can work with, something that shows you really did try your best or put forth some effort. This is what learning is, and this shows me effort and ownership on your part. On the other hand, when I don't see any emails and no work was turned in, there was no effort, no accountability, no work done, so no credit, and no chance to make up the lost points. Amnesty is over. Keep that in mind. In this quarter, we do not have amnesty days planned. We did not have them planned in the first quarter, and we decided to give them to you based on our recognition that some of you did have a rocky start with transitioning to virtual learning, and we know that it was challenging. But now we are going into week 10 of virtual learning. We are starting the second quarter. You all know what to do. You all should be in a rhythm, and if you're not, we should be hearing from you. Make sure you communicate, and we will always help you if we see the effort and see you showing up and taking accountability. And then there was this. And so we're going to talk about why we did this one lesson. This is definitely very important and is going to be our focus in Unit 4 and in really quarter 2. I didn't really see the point in doing the Our Ed puzzle when it was only like 4 questions. If you weren't sure, that was this lesson, analyzing the primary sources to answer the questions using evidence from the texts, the primary source documents about Mansa Musa. To be sure, it was not just one scholar who provided this feedback about that lesson. There were a handful of detractors, such as this one. I didn't see the point in the long ed puzzle we had. It was too long and it drained me out a little. Okay, and that's fair. I would say this, if you're checking your email, you would have seen that I did indeed give you 2 days to complete this one. And so once again, if you're communicating with me, I will be willing to work with you to make sure that you have enough time to get out of the lesson what I was hoping for you to meet the objective. And then this came up a few times. Some scholars were struggling to use evidence from the source to support their answers, and this is evident in many of your answers to assignments, whether you echoed this feedback on the survey or not. Looking at the work that was turned in during first quarter, I'd say the majority of you all need help developing this skill. And so thank you for sharing your true feedback. I tend to look at responses without viewing student emails, so I don't know who said these things. It is important to me that you can share honestly without worrying about being judged by me or having me think differently about you or hold anything against you. Absolutely not. I really do want you to be honest. It is also important to me that you understand the purpose behind your learning, because I take great care to make sure, as best I can, that there is a purpose to anything I ask you to do. I am very much against busy work, and I never want to waste anyone's time, including my own. It takes a lot of time to put these lessons together, especially virtual learning. There is so much extra that we are doing than what we have to do in the classroom, and we already do a lot there. So I wouldn't put the time in if I didn't think it was worthwhile, and let's talk for a few minutes about what that lesson was teaching you and why it's important. So let's take a step back, because all of this comes down to using evidence to support claims. Why it is important that you know how to use evidence to support your claims goes back to the Common Core state standards. The ninth grade Common Core State Standards are the things that every ninth grader is supposed to understand and know how to do before they go on to 10th grade. The Common Core State Standards are created to ensure that all students graduate from high school with the skills and knowledge necessary to succeed in college, career, and life, regardless of where they live. These are skills you will use throughout your whole life, throughout your whole time in school. You will probably forget the facts that you learned. You will, I promise. Your brain only holds so much information, and when you don't use it, it prunes it out. But you will still have these skills if you practice them and take time to master them. And they will help you to be successful in the 10th grade and beyond. These are also the skills that tests like the SAT and PARCC measure. So they will help you not only to get into college by scoring well on the SAT, but then to complete all 4 years of college and get your degree. Let's take a look at a few of the Common Core State Standards for 9th grade. Analyze various accounts of a subject told in different mediums, determining which details are emphasized in each account. To analyze is to simply look for and identify the details that support the claim. Here is another one of the 9th grade Common Core Standards. Again, that being the skills that you are to master before leaving the 9th grade. Cite strong and thorough textual evidence to support analysis. In other words, back up the claims you make using details from the text or other source that support the claim you are making. In other words, that show why your claim makes sense or is correct. So this is the one we are really focusing on as it applies well to social studies and historical thinking. This is why we do lessons like that longer ed puzzle. It will not give you a 50-minute ed puzzle every time we have self-paced days, of course not. I also won't give you 10-minute ones every time, because sometimes it is necessary to walk you step by step through this skill in order to build it. Delineate and evaluate the argument and specific claims in a text, assessing whether the reasoning is valid and the evidence is relevant and sufficient. There's a lot packed in there, but in simple terms, identify the claim being made, use the evidence given by the text to support the claim, and decide whether the evidence actually does support the claim being made. Explain your reasoning. This is the advanced version of this skill. In the previous standard, you are making a claim and backing it up with evidence. In this standard, you are identifying a claim made by someone else and then picking out the details or the evidence that they use to support their claim, and then deciding for yourself and explaining whether or not you believe that the evidence they're using, the details they've cited for their argument, actually support the claim they've made, show that it makes sense or is accurate. So in Unit 4, we will continue to practice the skill of using evidence, specific, relevant details to support our answers. We will use the CER model to do this skill building. And I will give you these slides in classroom as well, because it would be good for you to keep this visual handy. A claim is a descriptive statement that answers a question. It is your answer to the question if we're talking about a worksheet or a test. Evidence is data or information that supports your claim. And then reasoning is the part most people struggle with, but this is how you tie your evidence to your claim. It is your own explanation of how the evidence supports your claim. Let's take a look at a simple example. Claim: Miss Lund likes the Kansas City Chiefs football team. This would be a descriptive statement answering a question such as, what is Miss Lund's favorite football team? Or even more simply, what kinds of things does Miss Lund like? If you were trying to figure out what I like without asking me, you would look at the evidence. You'd look around my desk in my classroom and say, well, here's the evidence. There are pictures of her at a Kansas City Chiefs game around her desk, and there's also a Kansas City Chiefs banner on her wall. So those were details that you noticed that support the claim that Miss Lund likes the Kansas City Chiefs. Your reasoning then is once again your explanation of how this evidence supports your claim. Well, Miss Lund would only hang up pictures and decorations of things that she likes. To tie it all together, let's revisit just a few minutes of that lesson where you were shown how to analyze a source to answer questions using evidence about Mansa Musa.
So question number 1, what motivated Mansa Musa to undertake this pilgrimage in the first place? Here's our first source, and you notice by taking a quick glance, can't help but notice that a few words are underlined, and then at the bottom in bold, it tells you the source. So you have a few things underlined here: retribution, alms, and fast. Fast we talked about previously in our lesson on the rise of Islam, and we said that that meant to abstain from eating or drinking. Retribution and alms are words that we have not seen before or we did not define previously, so those are going to be on your glossary. Okay, so we see this source is Tariq al-Fatash, and unless you speak Arabic, that's not going to be a familiar term to you. It certainly wasn't to me the first time that I read through these sources. A quick Google search, however, tells us that it is the history of Timbuktu, written by Mahmud Kati in the 17th century. The word Tariq in Arabic means history. Now let's read through the source, remembering that we're ultimately looking to answer the question, what motivated Mansa Musa to undertake this pilgrimage in the first place? As for the pilgrimage, the reason for it was told to me by the student and keeper of the traditions of the ancestors, Muhammad Huma, who mentioned that King of Mali, Kankan Musa, is the one who accidentally killed his mother, Nana Kankan, and he was sorrowful about this and regretted it, and feared retribution for it. So he gave large amounts of wealth as alms and resolved to fast for the rest of his life. Next piece of this same source from Tariq al-Fatash. He asked some of the ulama, learned ones or scholars, of his time, what he should do to be forgiven for this great offense. One of them said to him, "It is my opinion that you should seek asylum with the messenger of God. May God bless him and grant him peace." That very day, he resolutely made up his mind, and he began to gather wealth and provisions for the journey, calling upon his kingdom on every side in demanding supplies and assistance. So once again, we want to make sure that we take a look at the underlined words. Those are on your glossary, and make sure that we understand what these terms mean to be able to interpret the meaning of this passage as a whole. Of course, in this passage, the ulama are suggesting that the Musa make the pilgrimage. The messenger of God, the last prophet, was Muhammad. Muhammad's birthplace and the founding of Islam is in Mecca. And so they are advising him to take that Hajj, take that pilgrimage to Mecca to seek asylum or seek safety and protection with the messenger of God, the Prophet Muhammad, in Mecca.